Oh, hello there. Today is Frameworks Atlas Day. We're on the second of the frames in alphabetical order. And by the way, I've been thinking a little bit since we did the first one, the Ash Day, last week. And I've been thinking a little bit, and I wanted to clarify that we're probably going to go back through a lot of these. I think that because these early ones, I don't exactly know like what I want to include in framework overall. There might be some. It might just be formatting stuff, but it might be sort of like policy or directional ideas that I don't know yet that I think are a good idea. And we'll eventually loop back around. I had mentioned that the order I plan to go in is alphabetical, and then I'm going to avoid frames that haven't been primed until they have been. The idea there is that if you would like the prime, mostly for fashion, you can set up the builds that we discuss. You can set up your builds. I can set up my builds. And there isn't really going to be like another version of that frame that comes out. For all intents and purposes, this is sort of the final one. You can make your umbral forma investments. We're going to talk about that today with a little more confidence. Again, it's pretty much just the fashion. Like, is there really a meaningful difference between the prime and the normal version? No. In every single case, there is no Warframe in Warframe where I would recommend doing anything different because you have the Prime or not. Some of them have differences in stats that meaningfully affect their abilities, but it doesn't change what is effective with their abilities. A really good example would be Rhino. Obviously, it's good to have more armor, but that doesn't change anything that I would recommend doing with that armor. It's just like, I guess, better. You have a bigger number. Again, a lot of frames have more like base health, base armor, but I wouldn't build anything different on any of them. I don't feel any of them kind of cross a threshold, if you want to say it that way, except in extreme corner cases. Like I have a Necros build where the non-prime doesn't have enough strength to ever cast Shadows of the Dead, just because of like the very specific amount of energy that Necros has at base. But that's like the one in a million. That's literally the only example in the entire game. So we're not gonna, yeah. There's no difference between the prime and the normal version. There's the archive parlay forum. I'm gonna send the notifications on Twitter and on Discord. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. I think that as we do more of these, we're gonna be getting to the point where it will make sense to go back and do some differently, and that's fine. We'll just loop back around. If you think of it this way, if I'm going to skip the primes and go in alphabetical order, we will probably just about finish every Warframe that has a prime this year, a little bit later than this year, like the beginning of 2023. And then we'll be waiting for frames to get primed and or revising or circling back around to frames that I did early, like Atlas here or whoever, but also frames that, maybe get reworks or updates or new augments that I have a lot to say about or stuff like that. And if we run out of that stuff, we could take a break from framework and or we could talk about ones that you all think deserve a second look. So in that vein, I wanted to start the conversation about Atlas with sort of a disclaimer. And Yachigami, welcome back. You sent me something on Discord that I found very helpful for thinking about this topic. So I'd like to start the discussion of Atlas here. The way that I like to structure these is by discussing what the Warframe does, what their abilities are, maybe some of those things that are particularly noteworthy. Let me get on one that doesn't have helmet abilities, excuse me. Get rid of my build because that does not matter yet. We're and we'll talk about like what they do, what might be a standout ability, maybe something unique they do, their augments. For the purposes of framework, we're talking about builds for players that have lots of build options. So every augment is we just assume you have those. If you don't, that's okay. They're not bad, but there's no point in making a build if you don't have options to build with. And then we'll talk about what I feel like are the sort of the greatest hits for building that frame. And it's that topic that I want to talk about here. So for Atlas, for example, you can make a build around Landslide. I'm just not sure I would agree that it does anything. And what I mean by that is
everybody breaks. Let us toast this timeless old age by aging it more. Shall we wait or conjure the next fragment of time, waiting? While everything breaks.
All it really does is cause everything to break. Efim, thank you for the tier 1 sub for 18 months, 1.5 years. Welcome back. How you doing today? You came at a good time. We are just discussing the Stonebreaker himself. What I was getting at is just that Landslide feels to me like a playstyle. It's not bad or extremely overpowered. It's just like a thing you can do. And there are lots of things you can do. I do not feel that this warrants a mention if the discussion topic is, what do I do with this frame if I have every other frame? But I also feel like, to talk about it that way, there are frames where there is nothing that I would bother doing on them, you know? If we go through every frame in the game, we only talk about what they uniquely do that, I feel is meaningful. I can tell you from my own perspective that there will be warframes where I will think there are no builds that are worth doing, and it clearly isn't particularly productive to talk about no builds. We should at least talk about one build, right? So I have a proposition. I feel like maybe that means that the best way to do it is to talk about both the things that are particularly unique playstyle choices and the things that are kind of unique utility. Does that make sense? So that's sort of like what builds we're looking for.
Ahoy! Excited for some stream during a windy, rainy day.
And that is the weather here as well. Pingers, thank you very much. Welcome back. With the Prime sub for 4 months in a row. And Fat the Great, thank you for the Prime sub. Welcome back. Efim, you gifted 2 tier 1 subs, the Holotones and Dragoon. Woo! We are starting on a hot streak. Ooh, hot fire. Delicious. You're getting me in the mood for some spicy food. Dragoon with the 5 tier 1 gifted subs. This is what we're doing, apparently. There is a dark storm brewing over the Atlas Framework Week. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the support. As you all know, this is my job. This is how I make my money. So if I don't get paid for doing this, then I eventually have to stop doing it. And to be honest with you, that time is approaching, but I have a lot of free time. I have my affairs in order to make a lot of videos. So it's extremely validating. It's extremely encouraging to be given so many subscriptions, so many subs, maybe encouraging people to come back and give the stream another shot at this critical, pivotal moment in my career. So thank you. It really does mean a lot to me. Right, Atlas. We'll come back to this topic a little bit later, but to summarize, I was just trying to say that I feel like it's important to think about what builds there is like a point in talking about. We could just talk about builds all day for every frame, but if we have a 2-hour show, we do need to pick and choose. I want to get to talk about builds and then actually play them. And that means that we should have some methodology by which we decide what builds are like worth discussing. And there are a lot of frames, I think Atlas is one of them, where there are many clearly effective ways you could build them, but like why? Like why particularly this frame? When we talked about Ash, we talked about how Ash is actually not the squishiest frame in the world, but you do have invisibility, and on balance, that is usually a simpler way to stay alive. So I feel like, yeah, you don't have to build invisibility. It's not like stupid not to, but why not talk about the thing that Ash is uniquely good at, that is maybe a little more efficient, rather than something that, while perfectly respectable, is just something you do because you like that playstyle, That's not bad. It's just not particularly worth talking about over other stuff, I hope that kind of makes sense. That's what we're going to try. Rainmaker, thank you for the 1,500 bits. That is 1,500 pennies, which is 15 US dollars, baby. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I saw someone sneak in Dragoon. You snuck in 100 bits in there. Thank you. Every little bit counts, especially in intervals of 100. Right, so what does Atlas do? Really good base stats. Atlas has a kind of high base health and armor, and then his passive is going to let you take rubble and soak it up and add it to your form, giving you flat armor. This is going to go up to 1,500, but that's a lot of rubble. Each piece, so like you petrify an enemy and kill them, for example, is 50, is that right? Now, it heals you instead of giving you armor if you are not at full health, so having some kind of healing on hand can be really helpful. Now, you might be thinking, well, aren't they basically just like mini health orbs in that case? And it's kind of true, but you're just going to take more damage. It'll just be, so it's like a band-aid versus getting the wounds stitched up, If you can keep yourself topped off so you accumulate armor, you'll take less damage going forward, which will make it easier to maintain all of the rubble. This passive doesn't say any of the stuff I just said, but just trust me that that is actually Atlas's passive, and this is just something else over there. There's rubble, okay? There's a rubble meter. We get these punches. This is a combo attack. You hit it, you get a little dash to an enemy, you do damage in an area. It has this kind of combo built into it where the area gets bigger and it costs less energy. That's important, down to a pretty low cost. And eventually you get a big slam every 3 hits, if I remember correctly. The way that this interacts with the mods on your melee weapon, it does take those at the moment, and the combo counter, and combo counter mods like Blood Rush, has changed a lot of times over the years. So this is something where I'll be looking for your help when we get to discussing making a landslide build. But personally, I feel this is mostly noteworthy as like the Warframe's offensive ability. The developers know that people like having a Warframe ability that can just like kill enemies. I don't feel this is particularly relevant compared to just using weapons, but neither is it somehow inadequate either. So I don't want to build around this because I don't want to spend a lot of mod space on something that is just another way to shoot a rocket at my enemies and kill them. But it's not like weak. That's not the problem. This just goes back to that discussion I was having before. And in fact, there are some ways you can sort of manipulate it taking melee mods to make it very powerful. So we'll talk about those. Tectonics. You make a wall. You can make multiple walls with the augment, if I recall. The big thing about this is you can make it roll as a boulder, and that does some damage. Like the upfront damage is, it's damage. But yeah, they're not particularly the big bongo damage. This is a little wall in a game where you can basically fly, so you don't really need cover. There are some ways you can kind of defend objectives with these a little, and you can petrify them to make them do more damage. This does more damage if you petrify enemies. Let's talk about petrify. It petrifies enemies. You're a basilisk, you petrify in a cone, and they get petrified. This heals and kind of augments your other abilities, and also, the augment makes it make more loot. That is a big deal. We will get back to that. This is one of the only loot abilities in the game, and this one can be affected by strength to make even more loot. That can be a pretty big deal. So we'll really well and truly get back to that. And finally, Rumblers. This ability does a few things it doesn't really make clear. When you cast it, you petrify in an area. Now, it's not the ability petrify, but it does turn enemies to stone for whatever interacts with that. You summon 2 elementals. They draw fire. They're fairly tanky. They don't do a ton of damage. At lower levels, they might do okay damage. And they also die and make rubble. So they each make 1 rubble. You can cast this ability and then cancel it. You recast it, and they'll give you rubble immediately, which is powerful. That can be useful. If you have a lot of energy, you can kind of just feed yourself rubble or use it as a heal. That's another thing. Cool. So we can see tanky, a good amount of crowd control, and the main ticket to ride compared to other frames is that Atlas has a way to make more loot out of enemies. This is also an ability that you can subsume with the helmet system, meaning that it is, at least at the moment, the only loot ability that you can add to another frame, potentially another frame that already has a loot ability. Fantastic. So let's get into it a little bit more. Those are the things that Atlas literally does. And again, we're pretty tanky. So what might be a good place to start for making a build? First of all, I need to acknowledge this bit war that's going on. Rainmaker, 1,000 more bits. Dragoon, another 1,300 bits. Thank you both very much. Holy crap. I mean, I really appreciate it. Like, yeah, it will be used. Every penny will be used. So thank you very much. What about using landslide as a dash? Yeah, it does move you, and you are invulnerable while using it, but Atlas is already very tanky, so I would argue you'd want to be careful about over-focusing on the defensive value of this, because you're already playing one of the tankiest frames in the game, at just directly tanking the damage, I mean. Not at mitigating the damage, not at avoiding the damage, but it makes Atlas not take damage if he's shot. But Atlas is also one of the frames that cares the least about taking damage if he gets shot. So I don't think that's something to focus on, but it's certainly not bad. It gets better if enemies get higher level. It should be just enough for a Starbucks coffee. Please, Get out of here. I got the whole bar right there. I am Starbucks. Disclaimer, I'm not affiliated with Starbucks in any way, nor do I like Starbucks. Also, I do not support Starbucks. Sometimes they sort of lobby or outcompete local coffee shops, which is reprehensible. Also, their coffee is gross and overpriced. So that's me. That's my shade for the day. My budget for shade, I only get one. That's the $1. All those bits, I cash those into the shade machine. I get one shade that I can throw, and that was it. I'm done for the day. Delicious. Mokarade, thank you for gifting 5 tier 1 subs. Folks, are we going to get to the builds with all of this support? Mokarade, thank you very much. So generous. I hope that the folks that got gifted subs will consider sticking around and adding to our build discussions in Warframe and beyond, of course. In fact, you know, you all have been real generous today. You should get to pick, is there a game you really want me to play to make builds in tomorrow? You could pick one. Chat collectively. Think about it. I'll ask again later. Think about it. It'd be nice to do a little something, because that's very generous of you all. I will not play Raid Shadow Legends. Elden Ring. Maybe. If people really, really, really want to see me play that now, I will play it eventually, but now in particular, I'm not, like, opposed to ever doing that. Mass Effect. That might be a little long. It would be something that I would... Well, I guess I could play it for longer. Rainmaker, thank you for the 500 more bits. Efim, thank you for the tier 1 gift sub to Pixel. I will try to discuss builds through all this support, but I will fail. Right, Atlas. Okay. So before getting into like why what build, I wanted to kind of check the basics. So it's not that you need to use these mods. It's just like, why not use these mods? It's sort of a baseline. I would want something else if I'm going to lose the opportunity cost of getting these awesome benefits. Mostly it's the Umbral mods. I do frameworks when the Warframe has been primed so that you've got the better fashion one, and that's not going to change later. And that means it's pretty safe to invest your Forma, your Umbral Forma. And Atlas is Warframe with a lot of health, a lot of armor that has clear benefits for tanking with health and benefits from strength in some ways. So it is hard to imagine that you would make an Atlas build that would not be happy to have like at least 2, maybe all 3 of the Umbral mods. We may talk about what I was using before. Now, there is a question about using all 3, I think, because Umbral Fiber is only going to boost Atlas's armor, at base, not the armor from the rubble. And that's going to be 1500 if you stack it all up. So this gives a ton of armor. Like, Atlas's base armor is really good. And with the Umbral set, it's obviously even more. Like, this is a lot of damage reduction. We went from 475, which was 61%, up to 82%, which is a lot of damage reduction, but keep in mind that this will be 1500 higher as well. So personally, I think Umbral Fiber is maybe I don't know. Then again, what happens with the Umbral mods is really showing its teeth here. Atlas is already getting, some strength and some health, and now that we have 2 of the Umbral set mods on the build, the third one gives so much of those things that even if we don't really care about the armor that much, it might just be really good anyway, because it gives so much strength and health. Anyway, you certainly don't need it. So I'm going to put these 2 on as kind of a baseline. And then for me, sort of the main ticket is using Orgaze. This is what I talked about before. This makes more loot. Now, this is subsumable. I always get prickly about talking about Warframe's build when the build is based on an ability or like an augment for an ability that you can put on other Warframes. Because, well and truly, if I wanted to play an Orgaze build, I wouldn't play Atlas. I would put it on another frame that I feel like is maximizing that, I'm not saying it's bad to put it on Atlas, but that's just the quality of these discussions. The entire discussion completely changes if we assume the Hellman system or not, So I do assume it. I am assuming it. I'm assuming you have the basic tools on the table, the Hellman system, the augments. And in that case, I don't know if I would use Orgaze here. You do get more rubble like that. It's good on Atlas in a way it isn't on other frames because you get a lot of rubble. So it's not like we can't talk about that. to me, there's a discussion to be had here of like, if you build something else, like maybe landslide, for example, could you squeeze in Orgaze and then get the benefit of making all the rubble? Because landslide has this augment. What is it called? Rubble heap. It says it's a passive augment, but I'm going to read it to you. When above 1400 rubble, it caps out at 1500. Landslide costs no energy, deals double damage, and travels twice as fast. Oh, so topping off a lot of rubble. Whew, okay. Now you might be thinking, well, but getting more loot doesn't make that better. Like, it's good to get more loot, and you might want to use Petrify anyway, but do you want that with Rubble Heap? And I think you do, and the reason is that energy orbs are loot. And this ability can be a little expensive to cast over and over, but it kind of refunds itself a bit if you have this. It will give you more energy orbs, and then you get a way to petrify enemies for more damage on landslide, and top off your rubble, like kind of for free, like in a way that will refund itself a little. Does that make sense? So I'm kind of interested in a build that would, it's a landslide build, I guess. And then it's interested in still using Orgaze a bit, but we're not really maximizing for this. If you were going to do that, I think it makes more sense to build it somewhere else, you know, like Feather is saying, I would kind of still add it to the build, even though I'm not making an Orgaze build per se. I still feel like this is good. I hope I explained why. It kind of could pay for itself a little. Catching back up a little bit more. Another D&D stream was requested. I mean, I certainly have other D&D things I'd be willing to discuss if people want that. We could make some more 5th edition characters, sure. There's kind of there is a project revolving around D&D that I do want to get your input on. So we could do a stream where I talk about that, pitch that to you. Welcome back, Ace. How you doing? Just missed the hype train. Thought that might happen. Trying to host my own hype train with blackjack and hospitality. Nice. Looking forward to it. It sounds great. I'll make sure to be there. Right, so we have a ton of armor. Probably landslide, Orgaze. This is happening. I think adaptation is a good idea. Although with all this armor and also landsliding a bunch, it kind of feels like maybe adaptation is just sort of pointless with a landslide focus build, but in general I feel like this makes sense. You know, once you have a more stable form of defense, your armor and your health, having another layer of damage reduction is good, and this doesn't give you any until you take damage, but you're already kind of tanky, so you probably won't die before it stacks up. Good stuff. So yeah, like on a landslide build, I would say I'm not sure, you know, do I want to do this here? But, you know, maybe. Another direction I want to go in is, you know, I was talking about how for me, if you have every Warframe, I'm not sure I would make any build on Atlas with just his base abilities. Orgaze is useful potentially, but I would probably put it on another frame and stack a pair of loot abilities. So I'm not going to do that. And I personally don't like landslide. And it's not like particularly more powerful than just shooting enemies. So that's a playstyle choice. It's not bad. But why choose that over something else if you don't simply like it? When that happens, I feel like it's good to open the discussion very quickly to Helminth abilities. Is there some Helminth ability that if you added it to Atlas would have some unique ability? You know, there'd be some good interaction. I don't know. Nothing immediately comes to mind. I guess he summons 2 minions. Like some kind of you make a ton of dudes build could be okay. That can be a fairly powerful way to defend objectives. And as much as this ability is ridiculous, it isn't terrible for defending objectives if you have other stuff going on. So that kind of build, we gonna do some kind of like point defense thing with what Helminth ability though? I don't know. Anyway, let me catch up on chat a little bit. I will write down a few of the other games that y'all mentioned that I'm not familiar with. Impossible Creatures. Pixel. That sounds cool. Send dudes build. How fast are Atlas's abilities? Natural talent, maybe? Yeah, I don't think it's a terrible idea. I feel like Atlas's abilities are neither super fast or really slow. In particular, I feel like landslide, I don't really feel like it needs this, but I'm not the biggest landslide fan. I'm curious what people think. Maybe. Smite Infusion. Oh, you put Oberon's Smite on Atlas, and then Smite Infusion gives radiation damage to the Rumblers. That's hilarious. I'm not sure if I feel like that's going to be really powerful, but that is funny. The only one that's slow is Rumblers, but you get a Petrify Field uncast anyway. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt, right? Like, a lot of these abilities are controlling space in the first place. So is it really necessary to have it be faster? I don't know. I don't know. Doesn't feel... Yeah. So I don't know about Nachiton, but it's always a good thing to bring up. Let's see. So yeah, I feel like it's worth looking at the Helminth abilities already. Gamer for Life, you said silence pauses the duration while you use the Petrify Infinite finishers. You're talking about... Whoa. Ace, thank you for the $100 tip. $104.07 to be specific. Something about work being tiring. I wear many hats. Many pants, though? I will leave that to the specialists. I do wear a lot of pants. I've been known to wear outfits that are pants on my legs, pants on my shirt, pants on my coat, pants on my shoes. It's possible. I don't yet have denim shoes, but I do have a shirt made of pants and a jacket made of shirts of pants. A jacket made of shirts that are made of pants. No, a jacket made of pants. Ace, thank you very much. I sometimes don't know what to say when given such a generous tip, but I gotta say, I'm gonna be using it. Something that I've been wondering if you would all like to see is like a total earnings for the month meter, you know? So like the Patreon income, my income on Patreon, I'd list that publicly. I don't have any reason to hide it from you. Some people don't. There's some marketing stuff about like, should you not tell people? And I don't really care about that shit. I feel like you guys can see it. You're the ones supporting me. Why not? So you can see that number, but you can't automatically publicly see how much money I make through like Twitch stuff and YouTube stuff, you know? Do you want to see that? Like, would it be fulfilling to see like a total earnings over the month bar? I'll tell you right now, it's hovering around, I mean, you guys just increased it by quite a bit, but like it's currently hovering around $500 a month. And I need it to be about $1,000 a month, but like by the end of this year, which is a lot of time. But I'm just curious, if that's something you'd like to see. It wouldn't be that hard to do. I'd manually update it, but it's just not, it wouldn't be that much work. So anyway, just a thought. Right, anyway. The abilities. So yeah, infusing the Rumblers with radiation damage is like interesting, but not particularly exciting to me. But that is interesting. Again, to me, it's like if there was a build where I wanted to add radiation damage to my creatures I summoned, I think I would rather do it on a frame that maximizes that more, you know? And not to say it's a bad idea, it isn't. And I do think that since Atlas is so tanky, it's nice to go in the direction of more damage in some way. You can use Zephyr Subsume to gather enemies into better petrify a bunch of dudes. Yeah, that's a reasonable idea. So there's a thing about petrify that enemies aren't always petrifiable. Let me explain. So if you use larva, there's something about the way that the enemies are grabbed and held in a bundle that makes petrify sometimes not work. Like if you use Strangledome, it messes with petrify, which is not great because Strangledome can also be a loot ability. Anyway, this means that you're maybe a little more interested in which grouping ability, whereas normally there might just be one you prefer. You might have one that you think is kind of better than the others. They all have various advantages, but Atlas is a Warframe, well, with Petrify anyway, where you may wish to pick one a bit more specifically for Petrify. I had thought that Korra's Entangle worked really well. Ensnare. I sort of forget, but I thought I do have this on my build. I thought that this one kept enemies standing up, which lets you petrify them. I thought this worked pretty well. Let's quickly demonstrate that, as a matter of fact. Ah. If you were going to do a landslide build, Ember's ability could be nice for armor reduction. That's an interesting idea. The healing part of it is sort of like might feel like nice quality of life. That sounds kind of cool. I'm going to quickly write that down. That sounds like something that someone who wants to make a landslide build might enjoy. Just making a note. Excuse me, let me swap to this other build. And we'll go from there. Right, so this build is literally just Ensnare and Orgaze. It's the Orgaze build on Atlas. Now, I had said before, I don't know that I particularly want to do that, but you well could. Let's do a thought experiment. What if you put Orgaze on Necros, and then you stack Necros's Desecrate to make more loot, and Atlas's Orgaze to make more loot. To make more loot. Well, you have two loot abilities, but if you do this build instead, you already have Petrify, you don't have Desecrate, but you can take a grouping ability, and then you're only making more loot with one ability, but you are making more loot with it because you're grouping enemies up. So that's the thing. That being said, I do feel like Ensnare is not worthy of too much discussion beyond just like being a good choice, because it's so good so often, all these grouping abilities. I'm always going to mention them if I feel like they're worth a mention, but we don't have to spend too much time on them because they will come up very frequently. I think it would be wrong to never mention them. They come up frequently because they're good frequently. But I also think it's just a waste of time to spend too much time on them. So let's briefly show like grouping for loot. Or make sure that works, basically. I don't really remember. So again, all we really need to do here, all we're really looking to see is we do this. It groups enemies up. Now, can you petrify them while they're like that? Yes, you can. Great. So when you do larva, I just wanted to clarify before we move on, they will not petrify. It's not entirely clear why, but it seems like if enemies aren't kind of facing you, standing up straight, if they don't have good posture, they don't get petrified. I'm not sure why that is, but it's consistently inconsistent, so maybe it's supposed to be that way. I don't really know. Anyway, moving right along. If you wanted to do that, I don't think that's a bad idea. The only other thing to say is that Orgaze, it's affected by strength. So when you build for Orgaze, it's worth considering, it's worth thinking about that drop chance increase. One of the things about adding Orgaze to Necros with Desecrate and stuff is, you know, that you get double loot. That's great. Or double loot. You get more loot in two ways. You can Petrify Orgaze them, and then you can Desecrate them once they die. That works, and you get a lot more loot, sure. You're not grouping them up in particular, but there are other ways to group enemies up. But the other loot increasing abilities are not affected by strength. So you're not particularly incentivized to build toward Orgaze being like a very large amount of more loot. And Orgaze's base value is not very large. You know, it's only 25%. So without a decent amount of strength, this arguably doesn't really do anything. So that's something to think about. I just wanted to note that that is, you could consider that to be one more reason to make an Orgaze build on Atlas, to like focus on actually building for Orgaze. But anyway, that's all there is to say about that. Dragoon, that might work. Larva with the augment. Anyway, I hope you'll forgive me for not going through and testing every grouping ability, but I think that as long as they're not like grabbed by something, like the way Larva and Strangledome grab enemies, that kind of ragdoll state, I think that's what it is. I think Ragnavar is right about that. I think its abilities that ragdoll enemies, but you'll forgive me for not going through all of them. I just wanted to demonstrate at least a few that do work before we move on. Right, so yeah, like a landslide Orgaze thing, that does still appeal to me. Now, landslide hits in an area, it can hit in a radius, and we do have a little bit of strength already. Now, having there be good strength for Orgaze and landslide is nice, but it doesn't have to be super high. So adding a lot of range kind of sounds appealing to me. Now, for now, I'm going to drop adaptation, because if we're spamming landslide, then the defenses are just so high, I think it's fine. But we'll come back to that. If I die a bunch, then you could decide for yourself. If it's a build that will care about range, which I think it does, Cunning Drift is, I just think, really good value. This mod is frustrating in some ways, because 15% ability range is very difficult to beat in this slot for builds that care like at all about range. That's not a small amount of range, and stacking a bunch of range is often really good in Warframe. I find this mod a little frustrating. It's not like on its own overpowered, but it's sort of reductive. Because it exists, I'm often not as interested as I could otherwise be in using something else, but that doesn't make it bad. I'm still going to recommend it. Some kind of damage increase, growing power, steel charge for landslide, I guess. I'll just do growing power for now. I'm inclined to lean in the direction of growing power because it benefits Orgaze as well. And then more strength. Do we really care about duration? How long does this last? 20 seconds? What the hell? Yeah, no, that's way longer than we need. Transient fortitude. Efficiency. Now, efficiency is weird because Rubble Heap is going to make landslide free. And it would really just be Orgaze, but part of the benefit of this was supposed to be we can petrify enemies, get the damage bonus on landslide, we get more loot, and then it might make more energy orbs, which makes it refund itself, at least a bit. So building a bunch of efficiency feels a little wasteful. It's like, what, we went to a decent amount of work to not need that. So maybe we'll hold off on building a bunch of efficiency and just see how it is. That's a good way to go. Just even more range? 250 range. How big is this cone? 35 meter range, 60 degree angle. That's pretty big. Okay, wow. And landslide's radius is 5 meters. Yeah, boy, remember that's radius too, not diameter, but radius. Yeah, that's my demo for what diameter and radius are. Anyway, okay. Anyway. Yeah, I do want to say something about Orgaze, with what Pixel is saying. One of the benefits of Orgaze on Necros, with the double loot thing, like Necros makes more loot, but also makes a ton of energy if you use Equilibrium and Despoil, which I would highly recommend you do. The thing about Orgaze is if you want to petrify, I mean, have you played Warframe? You're going to have to cast this all the time, like all the time, very, very often. Now, I like the idea of this build because it has a built-in kind of fix for that a little bit. We have an ability that costs no energy. That is what the build is doing. So you can spend literally all of your energy on just spamming Orgaze. That being said, it's like, ooh, like it's energy hungry. I don't want to undersell when I said like, oh, maybe we can leave the efficiency off. Can we? I don't know. Anyway, got one more slot. I don't know. Something that comes to mind is Path of Statues. I like this augment. I don't think it's that good. When you landslide, you leave a trail behind you, very good duration, that petrifies, a good base duration. So you can build a bunch of duration and use this to leave petrifying trails behind you. I really like this. I would like to, after this build, we're going to make a Path of Statues build because I like this augment. I think it's actually kind of really good, but only if you play in a really weird way that I want to talk about. But I think it's really interesting. So to put my cards on the table, I would like to spend the second half of the stream talking about Path of Statues. But for now, we have this build. What about a Helminth ability? So we're landsliding, we're punching. What Helminth ability? And here's where I would like to talk about landslide and melee weapons. Some of you may know from watching the stream for many years on these Thursdays on which the stream happens, that the Thursday Warframe Zandy show is often a show where I grumble about these types of pseudo-exalted abilities. This is true. This is a thing that I've done. Let me briefly explain my gripe, and then we'll move on. But I would like your input, your help, understanding what weapons in what ways work well with landslide. Okay? This is not a subject I'm particularly proficient in, and I'm going to explain why. The first reason why is that I feel that people sort of overestimate how effective this is. A thing about melee weapons is that because of stance mods and the way that melee mods kind of scale, melee weapons have always been, in my opinion, a little bit overvalued because they are at their peak of their power for less investment. In other words, you can take a melee weapon and build like a combo build or whatever, and it takes a lot less forma and such than if you were to do that on a gun. You may disagree with this, but I don't believe that the gap between the power level of those things is like really big at all. In fact, I don't think there's basically any. I don't think there was previously. I don't think there is currently like a particularly meaningful gap there. They'll both just kill everything. The thing is that melee weapons do it like earlier on your account. Does that make sense? Again, you might disagree. That's fine. I'm just explaining that's what I think. And I mean, I do think there's demonstrable reasons for that. Many players, in other words, feel that melee weapons are stronger, and sort of invisibly, it's not noticed that their melee weapon is actually just fully invested, where their primaries and secondaries aren't yet. In other words, they're being compared by most players when their primary and secondary weapons could still get stronger, but their melee weapon will not be getting stronger. But that's just as far as they've gotten. So melee weapons feel stronger sooner, but they don't necessarily like peak way higher than, you know, primaries and secondaries. I don't think. And that's why. Okay, so that's reason number one. I just feel like landslide just isn't that amazing. Like, it's good. It hits in an area. I don't like it because it doesn't make my hand feel good. Like, that's why. And that's a stupid reason. Like, if you think it's fun, there's no problem with this. I'm just not the biggest fan. I explained before, I feel like you can kind of just kill everything anyway by shooting a rocket launcher at them. So why spend build space on making this a way you can kill things? In general, I feel like this is just the fallacy with Warframe damage abilities, period. Like, all Warframe damage abilities sort of fall to this criticism, unless they kill enemies in such a powerful way, in such an enormous radius, and there are abilities that do that, as to make it truly superior to a firearm. There are Warframes like that. I feel like if you compare, you know, Lavos, and you use, you know, the gas version of his 4, and then you use not Expedite Suffering, but the other one anyway, you kill enemies like on the entire map immediately, at like on the steel path, like at an arbitrarily high level. That is better than guns. Like, that is, you could not have done that without using those abilities. You know, this isn't like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, like, that's why I'm not interested in it. It isn't especially powerful. That's why. I don't like it, but I cover builds that I don't particularly like all the time on this channel. The reason that I'm talking about this one is because I feel it's like there's no accounting for taste. I'm not trying to say your taste is bad. I'm just saying it's like we could just cover every build in existence if we were covering every build someone might like. The way I prefer to do it is to focus first on novelty. And I guess the way this feels is novel. I just mean it isn't really mechanically novel. It's not truly accomplishing something unlike other abilities, other approaches. Does that make sense? It has nothing to do with something it should have to do with, which is whether people like it. And I am fully aware, as I'm saying all this stuff I'm saying to you, that, yeah, okay, it's not an advantage. It's not especially more powerful than other options, but a lot of people just like it. It is just a playstyle difference, and people might like whatever, but an unusually large number of people like this, so we should cover it. I agree. I just wanted to explain why I don't like it, and feel that in general, abilities like this are not like particularly worth anyone in particular's time unless you just like them. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no pejorative there. I just, like, we have to choose somehow what builds to cover. And on a Warframe that isn't doing much else and has an ability with a unique approach that a lot of people really like, that seems like a good time to cover an ability like this. Does that make sense? Okay, right. Yes. Let's catch back up on chat. Landslide becomes much more powerful when you give it the ability to crit, Yatogami says. I use Arcane Avenger, 50% flat, and Blood Rush. The latter pushes the base 5% crit chance to 30% or a net 80% with Avenger. Does Blood Rush work on Landslide now? Is that a thing? Really? That's kind of exciting. I always thought it was really awkward, so the second reason that I didn't like, thank you for the amazing segue, to build around abilities like Landslide, the community has sometimes called these pseudo-exalted abilities, because exalted abilities in Warframe are the name that is usually used when a Warframe makes a weapon with a Warframe power. Exalted abilities can be modded separately. So like Excalibur's Exalted Blade, there's like Titania's Guns and Sword. These are exalted abilities. A lot of them are called exalted abilities. And so the community has often called things like Landslide pseudo-exalted abilities because they're kind of like that. They just don't let you mod it separately. They don't really make a weapon, but they are a weapon with stats. Those are just not visible in the game. I find that very frustrating. I feel like these are the kinds of weapons where something key will be changed about them while no one is looking, and you can't see it anywhere in the game. So like the status of these abilities requires research, and that is frustrating to me. You can't really make an informed decision about what to put on them without really digging into the ability a lot, and the designers could fix this if they just put the stats in the game. I hope very much that these abilities are given their own separate modding eventually, and for what it's worth, some of the designers have before said that they would be interested in doing that at some point, but in Warframe, historically, we have no idea when that will be. That could be in years, you know? I hope it's very soon. I think it would be a great readability increase. But anyway, we clearly can't count on that. So I hope you can see how this is a topic that me, as someone who's trying to make one video, not update this every week or whatever, I'm not the biggest fan of talking about these kinds of things, but now screw it. We are going to talk about them because you all want to. I just wanted to explain my gripes with this because I think for some people that might be worth thinking about. Right, okay. So Arcane Avenger, let's talk about that first. And now, if I'm understanding correctly, just to be clear, you do not need this to make Landslide able to scale with Blood Rush. Landslide now just does scale with Blood Rush. You do not need this to make Landslide crit. That being said, because Landslide's crit is not going to get super high with Blood Rush alone, this is worth considering if you're going to make it crit. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I have this. A lot of people won't, but we'll put an Avenger. We can test it without that if people want. And then we're just using some weapon. We'll talk about that a little later. And we're going to use Blood Rush. Okay. And now another complication here. If you're not familiar with pseudo-exalted abilities, they don't take the weapon's stats. The weapon just holds the mods. It is a stat stick or a mod stick, as the case may be. Do you see how it's really awkward, how these abilities don't have their own separate modding? Anyway, so remember that when we're putting the mods on this thing, it's not because we're using Guandao Prime. It's just any weapon to put the mods on, right? Another thing, Landslide has its own separate thing that it calls combo, but it's something else. And then combo counter also applies, but it's like over here. So there's Landslide's combo, which is like the thing where it gets bigger range and costs less energy and does more damage and all that stuff. And then the third hit is the bigger uppercut, like that's combo. But then Landslide also has like the normal combo counter over here, which is somewhat confusing. That being said, that means that it would be good to build some combo counter stuff. I'm going to suggest using Gladiator Rush and Weeping Wounds, get some heckin' status. Now, I've played Warframe for a very long time where Landslide was not affected by these things, by Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds, which was pretty much its only problem. That was essentially the only issue I had with it. You couldn't really get it to do other damage multipliers. You just pile damage onto it. Now, it did so much damage that piling damage onto it was actually fairly effective, but it was held back by not being able to like use math to be good at damage traditionally. You're now telling me that it can do that. This is very exciting. This is the part of the video where we need to look up what Landslide's base stats are, because otherwise we don't know what weapon we're building onto. And the base damage is all, it's all impact, right? So let's take a look. Abilities. Now, before I go on, I am now going to go on to read you what the stats are. But before we move on, I want to highlight that no matter what the status chance is, as long as it's not like 1% or something, or 0%, like having this much more status is very, very, very powerful, because the difference between, you know, you have 1 heat proc reducing enemy armor and 0 heat procs reducing enemy armor is very, very large. So I just want to highlight the status being bad doesn't automatically matter. It would have to be like truly atrocious for that to matter. We want to know how much we're going to get. So let's take a look, but I just want that as a preface. I really like to talk about how you as a player can think about, like, should this be good if landslide status isn't just like stupid? If it's low but not like idiotically low, then this should be good. So let's find out. Okay, the wiki says that it is all impact damage. It has normal crit multiplier, 2.0 crit multiplier, 5% crit chance, and only 5% status chance. Sad face. How much status will Weeping Wounds give us? Let's look up Weeping Wounds since I don't feel like doing the math. Weeping. If you have a base status chance of 5%, then at 12x combo, your status chance is 27%. Ooh. Oh no. Oh, stinky poo-poo level of status. Oh no. 27%. Now, all of that being said, I believe that that is still worth considering. 27% is a great amount for discussion, because it's like, that's bad, but 27% is still, you're gonna get status effects, you know? Getting 1, you know, gas proc or, again, 1 heat proc, 27% is right on that threshold where it's like, yeah, it's sort of a toss-up whether you're gonna get that. So I think this is worth keeping as part of the conversation. I'm not going to say definitely include it, because that 5% status is very low, but it would be wrong to say because that is very low, this is automatically just bad. That's not really how that works. It still increases the amount you get by a ton, and most weapons are pillow-fisted if they don't do any status. So I think that's worth thinking about. And again, it's important to consider that even though the weapon is pure base impact, you're going to add elements to it as well, unless it somehow was changed again and does not take those, which means it still will have a pretty good chance to proc what you're procking. Let's demonstrate that. So let's say we did, like, I don't know, gas or something. I'll put a stance mod on. And we'll do heat and gas. So we can see that taking the whatever weapons, total damage, and now we're building gas, let's say with these 2 mods. This weapon does, you know, like a little bit over 200 base damage, and we have 540 gas damage. This means that, guesstimating, rounding a little bit, Weeping Wounds are our status. Remember, our base status of 5% on landslide with Weeping Wounds at 12x is going to be 27% status. What this means basically is that if you mod gas this way, 2 out of your 3 status effects ish are going to be gas, and then the third one will be impact. So impact will do basically nothing for landslide. So let's just assume that's gone. So we lose a third of the status. We had 27%, a third of that is 9%, we lose 9%, and we get down to 18%. So 20%, like about a fifth of the time you just proc big gas for 3 mod slots. You know. So that's a thing. I'm aware that I have inbox things. I'm just working through this discussion bit. Thank you for your patience. Oh boy, big affinity. That's probably going to get used. We have hopefully that update coming soon, where I will take a break from Framework for a week and probably make a lot of use of these. But, you know, I'm working on a lot of other stuff to have build tools for other builds off stream. So those help a lot. Thank you. I really benefit from having those boosters. They directly save me time, which lets me make videos faster. So thank you. Right. All of that being said, we've pretty much arrived. What else do we want to put on landslide? Well, I guess base damage, right? You figure. Might as well neglect building crit chance because it's got 5% crit chance at base. We have Blood Rush and Arcane Avenger if you have it to help with that. But crit damage, good. So Organ Shatter will be on there. I'm going to grab a weapon that I have more space on. And specifically, we should talk about like what weapons. If you take the Zorus, do you get the infinite combo duration on Landslide? Probably yes. And another thing to think about would be Venka Prime. Venka Prime makes the combo counter larger, which means that you can get more out of Weeping Wounds. That's how that works, right? Chap, is what I'm saying, is that just completely not true? You don't get the infinite duration from the Zorus. I thought that was that change they made, but I wanted to thank you for reminding me. I thought they nerfed that ages ago because they hate fun. Please don't say they hate fun on my stream. It leads to people tuning out of the discussion about game balance rather than giving critique the developers can use. So while it's frustrating, I know, you need to understand that the developers believe that they did that because it would make the game more fun for some people. It isn't because they hate fun, that's absurd. Please do not say that here. That being said, I don't disagree with the sentiment. I think they are incorrect that it makes players have less fun. That is said, repeated, as a way to kind of negate any legitimate discussion about the game. So I know you were probably just saying it out of frustration, but please don't. So yeah, the Zorus action, that thing's gone. And then Venka Prime has the larger combo counter. I forget how that works, so I'm going to look it up. This is a really good demo for the the Warframe wiki is really getting a workout during this episode. The Venka. Right, yes. So it gives the combo multiplier another step. It goes to 13 times. That means that Weeping Wounds and Blood Rush will give you a little bit more. Let's not get carried away. It looks like it's going to give you 2% more status chance. Thank you. Very cool. Not sure I'm gonna write home about that one, but you could. There are some other weird ones. Yeah, like there's the whole thing, like the Jaw Sword is one example. Do I have that augment? But there's a few of these. Which ones do I actually have, though? I don't remember which ones I have. What are all the other weapons that have those augments that give them a bit more base damage? Because we need to talk about that a little bit. Oh man, do I like not have any of those? Maybe I can just buy them from my syndicate. Hold on. But while I look for that, I wanted to highlight that I don't necessarily think it makes sense to use a weapon that just slightly improves landslide, because it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of benefits to that. That being said, there might not be a lot of benefits to doing something else. What I would consider is whether the utility you're going to get from a weapon that's unrelated to landslide is, what trade-off is that with the damage you lose? And I feel like they're both small. Like, it's mostly just preference. But I know people like to hear about these things, or at least have some ideas. Here's an example for our discussion. So there are some of these like syndicate mods, augments for melee weapons, and they give 100% melee damage. Now that's base damage. It's just base damage. So this is really no different than like Corrupt Charge, or whatever mod became that effect. Sorry, Corrupt Charge was changed. You're gonna use maybe Prime Pressure Point or something and get 165% base damage. And if you had that Skana mod or the Jaw Sword mod or whatever, that would just be 100% more of this. Now that's not bad. That's a lot, but it isn't like double all of your damage. That would be way, way, way better. It is not. It does not do that. But that might still be worthwhile. I think that usually the way to decide that kind of stuff is to make the whole build and see like, well, okay, do I have a slot for it? So let's do that. And I'm not going to pick any weapon in particular. I'm just going to pick something I have a lot of space on. And we're going to put like what might be a build you might want to use on it. And then we can go from there. We could talk about like what specific weapon might you want to use. Jaw Sword Prime. That's a thing, isn't it? That I own. Or is it only Pangolin Sword Prime? No, they haven't done Jaw Sword Prime yet. You bamboozled me. I love how real that sounded. I was like, ah, yes, Jawsword Prime, the weapon that definitely exists. Anyway, Blood Rush. Again, for now, I'm going to think about Weeping Wounds. To know how good of an option this is relative to everything else, we need to see the whole build. Pressure Point, I talked about how we're boosting the crit chance other ways, but crit damage, that's something good. So Organ Shatter, fairly big damage increase when you eventually crit. Weeping Wounds, if you're going to do that, I might want to have a good status. So I suggested maybe gas. I feel like one heat proc or corrosive proc isn't, but having one enemy die and then you get a big gas AoE is maybe a little bit better. I don't know. I feel like that's not that amazing. And it would free up a lot of mod slots if we didn't do this. But again, to find out how valuable that is, we have to do it. So you could use Condition Overload if it affects Landslide. Again, this is why these abilities frustrate me, because it's like, even if it doesn't show that anywhere in the game, and that might be changed and you won't know. But anyway. Status, we'll add heat mod, and you might want to add just the vanilla heat mod because the status chance is so low at base, so let's do that. Molten Impact. Remember, the landslide status chance is only 5%, so that status heat mod only gives you 3% more status chance, which is a little miserable. I might rather just have a bit more damage. No condition overload on landslide. Okay, yeah, it didn't used to work, but again, this changes all the time. That's why I find these abilities so frustrating. What else we got? So we have base damage, elemental, this is elemental damage, base damage, crit damage, crit chance, status chance. There's no like multi-shot equivalent for melee. Attack speed, but that would just be casting speed for landslide, right? What else? Is there some other obvious thing? Combo duration, I suppose. The thing that comes to mind is Gladiator Rush, which will also increase the crit chance by a decent amount. Anything else? I guess a Bane, probably. This feels relevant. I would definitely appreciate the damage multiplier against armor, against which I expect a landslide to be terrible. So yeah, like, I don't know, maybe this. And then there you go, you got your space. So we can now think about, would you cut Weeping Wounds, cut Fever Strike, you cut Molten Impact, you get 3 mod slots. Is there like actually good stuff to fill that space with? And I think the answer is no. Like, you could add a little more base damage, you could add like a bunch of impact damage, you could use I think I bought Primed Heavy Trauma, but I've just had it sitting here because it's terrible. You could, technically this is a lot of raw damage, so I don't know, sure. Mokarade, you got it right. Heavy Trauma. This maxes out at a very high amount, but of course, essentially everywhere except for here, your weapon wouldn't be pure impact, and you wouldn't want all impact over an element, but then like maybe here you just want the raw damage. Like, if you feel like the status is just pointless, which is reasonable, like, that's fine. But would I recommend spending all the resources on this mod, like, just for this one weapon, just for this one build? I don't know, man. Some of you said you really like the punches landslide build, so you do you. I think for most players, probably don't do that, but that's just me. You could use normal heavy trauma. It's not good, but you could do that. Don't. I would just use an element that has a good damage type, like cold or something. I don't know. But you could. Primed Heavy Trauma does max out a lot higher. I think it's like 165%. We're memeing on it now, so we got to give it a fair shot. Let's... It's going to be 165. Yeah. So, I mean, a significant damage increase, okay? It's just something to think about. Modus Impact, Joshin Impact, Genshin Trauma, Genshin Impact. No, we're streaming that on Sunday. What does Modus Impact do? Increase the range of aerial melee attacks by 2 meters. What? Oh, like you use landslide in the air and then... I don't think range mods work on landslide. That's very funny though. Proton Snap. Hold wall latch for 2 seconds to gain 100% toxin damage and 50% status chance. Proton snap lasts for 20 seconds after a 2-second wall latch. Gives 50% flat status chance and 100% toxin damage. That's actually not terrible. It's bad, but not terrible. That's what I think. This is a good mod in general, but on landslide, I don't know. I also would like to say that this is the type of effect that, like Warframe spaghetti code, it often just like doesn't work for no reason. It's probably supposed to work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. Like, it probably does, but this is the kind of effect that it might be like the core. It just is broken, you know. I think this is a good mod in general. I don't know about on landslide. Combo that with Arcane Arachne. Oh, ho, 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 ho. I see what you're doing. You're getting spicy on me. Okay. So we have we're gonna wall latch already to get, this is base damage, so melee damage, you know, more prime pressure points. But then we're also scaling that with more elemental damage. Okay, all right. I mean, that's really weird, but like, yeah, sure. By the way, someone said earlier that Bane mods, like faction mods, don't work. That's a shame, because it would be very, very good. But too bad. What are you gonna do? Okay, so you spider rock, pet rock spider, Spooderman build, Spoder. Ah, yes. How about the combo Exodia Hunt Zaw Machete to build up the combo really fast? Yeah, I think that there's a discussion to be had about, if we're just going to use like some utility melee, what about a Zaw? Are there any Zaw arcanes that feel particularly relevant? That's a great question. I'm going to look at, what's the one that I'm using as part of the set? Samsara. Glorious. You could use Exodia Triumph. Now, I think for us to know if this feels valuable, we're going to need to punch with the amount of range this build has. I kind of feel like you don't need help building the combo with this, but we'll check. It's an interesting idea. Let's look at the others. Exodia Hunt, you could pull enemies together, but then it's supposed to be for landslide, or we want utility that you want to use when you wouldn't be using landslide. Like what? Heavy attack kill gives you energy recharge. Not particularly sensible, I don't think, but it's a good arcane in general. Finishers give you lifesteal. This is status effects. This doesn't crit and scale very well. Epidemic and Contagion could be good for like some utility. I don't know. Yeah. So let's look at this. Let's take my random stat stick that I made, and we'll take this build, and I don't have room for Proton Snap for our spider punches, so let's make room for it by getting rid of Gladiator Rush. And I'll just run Naramon to maintain the combo counter for now. And let's just punch with this build. Should we add a little more strength? I mean, we'd have to kind of tank the efficiency. But Orgaze might not be worth it. We can do it for now. Let's just try it for now. So this is a lot of damage. Let's go punch some people with it. And what we're looking for is, would the utility of building the combo counter quicker to get to the build's peak damage feel valuable? Like, how would that feel? Does that feel meaningful? I don't know how I want to test this, actually. Let's just go exterminate. Beta, welcome aboard. How you doing? We are testing out the Paunches build before we take a break and swap to making the Mimi, maybe kind of good in some ways, Path of Statues build that I wanted to try. So I'm going to try to build up combo, and we're going to get a benchmark for like how fast that builds up combo. You can see the damage is high. These are Steel Path enemies at level 130, so it's not good against them. And I don't have the defenses to survive them, but this is just to test it out. We want to build up combo and see how quickly that happens. And you can see that's 2x combo. 2x. So kind of slow, actually. Kind of slow. So maybe, yeah, I could see building up the combo counter faster, feeling good. That's not the fastest. I don't know. I guess my only hesitation is that in the kinds of missions where I'm imagining, I mean, you all tell me, because I don't like Landslide Atlas. I feel like on the kinds of missions that you want to use this sort of build on, like we're talking to survival. So it does take a while to get the combo counter maxed out, but it's like a few minutes, and then you just have it for the whole mission. You know what I'm trying to say? So does it really make sense to get the combo counter faster? I don't know. If you're using a Petrify heavy playstyle, Exodia Brave is very useful. Let me go back to that. What about the Theorem Arcanes? We can talk about that in a sec. Oh, just because you can get the energy back. Yeah, I think the hard thing about this, though, is unless we add combo counter efficiency that makes heavy attacks spend less than 100% of your combo, unless we have that, this spends a lot of combo, which I just established the build is not particularly amazing at building up. But I do think it's cool, the idea that you would occasionally use your melee weapon to like heavy attack a dude and get a bunch of energy back, like how we wish mercy kills actually worked, like in Doom. Yeah, like I don't hate that idea. Anyway, those are some options. The Theorem Arcanes, okay. Well, I think the main problem is that there are two obviously good arcanes already. So the Theorem Arcanes have a very clear opportunity cost for this landslide build. Now, you might not use Arcane Arachne, but you might use some other base damage. There's lots of good arcanes, of course. But using the Theorem Arcanes to add damage is not a bad idea. You know, it's elemental damage. I don't feel like that's particularly good here, because this is a very mobile playstyle, like being a melee attacker, especially one that dashes out of the area of the things you're hitting, and then doesn't kill enemies with primaries and secondaries because you're punching enemies. Yeah, so this feels like a bad fit here, but I like these coming up because they kind of went under the radar maybe, and they're a really interesting build option. You could change to a weapon that's very fast at building combo, just in general. The Stropha comes to mind. You could make a Za that is fast-ish at building combo, but I agree that maybe doing that with the weapon is not a bad idea. Yeah, like the cleave of this thing's waves that it shoots. That's an interesting idea, sure. Anyway, I feel like we've talked about it enough that you can at least make a choice for yourself about what you want to use. I think that something that has good cleave, yeah, like the Stropha, is probably what I would do. And then again, if only I had the space, I would want to fit Proton Snap and like probably Gladiator Rush here. That's just me. And you might consider using another element, like not gas. I just feel like the one time that you get the armor reduction is not going to be that meaningful. I don't know. If you want to do the heavy attack thing, on the other hand, you could get combo efficiency. The ones that come to mind would be Focus Energy. This gives you some electricity, which I'm not sure you want, but maybe anyway, whatever. That's the way you can get it. There's another mod that does it too. And then if you run Xeneric, then you can get it from Inner Might, a less focused on part of Xeneric. You get a bunch of heavy attack efficiency. And if you're not familiar with heavy attack efficiency, it caps at 90%. So you'll only spend 10% of your combo. So if you're at 12x, you'll go down to like 10x and very close to 11x. That's not that bad. And then the idea of that would be occasionally you can regain energy by using a Za that is using Exodia Brave, and you'll be punching along. And when you want to use Orgaze more, but you're out of energy, you kind of execute an enemy by using an Exodia Brave heavy attack from your melee weapon. You don't lose that much combo, and then you just keep on punching. That's nice. That's comfy feeling tech. I can get behind that. I'm just gonna write Exodia Brave max combo efficiency. Execute a dude for energy when needed. And then yeah, as for a a Helminth ability, I would be interested in something like, we talked about Embers, just to do a quick little... it's called Fire Blast. To reduce enemy armor in an area, and then the augment does give you a spot of healing, which like might feel comfy. That's an interesting idea if you were going to add something to Atlas. So that's a thought. And that being said, Praxel says, how obsolete do you think this information will be by the end of the month? Practically completely, and in all seriousness, that is a problem. Let's go to the parlay and talk about that. And then when we get back, I do want to talk a little bit about a Path of Statues build. And I'll check the mail as well. But yeah, I'm sure people will suggest other Helminth abilities for the Landslide build. While I'm gone, please feel free to. Today we have a parlay question that's very similar to what Praxel said. First, I want to thank people for following and subbing, because there's been a lot of that today. Pixel, Uncle Nene, and Vampire, you are just a few of the many people who got gift subscriptions during this stream. Thank you very much to all the people that generously supported the stream by doing that. It is the only reason I can keep doing what I'm doing. If people didn't do that, this is kind of the year where I'm just going to have to stop if I don't make enough money. I'm not in the black, but it is quickly improving. I had a lot of stuff on my plate until very recently. You all have helped so much and been very encouraging, and now it's really turning around. So we can do this. I'm going to make a ton of videos. It's going to be sick, and we'll make it work. I am very excited and encouraged rather than feeling scared and nervous that it won't work out because of all of your support. And thank you to all the new follows. The most recent one was Beta. I hope you enjoy your time boarding the Zandy vessel. Fish. And now, I bid you all a brief adieu. I will see you in a few minutes, and we'll continue our discussion with Path of Statues memes. Behold my Twitch archive parlay segment, where I answer questions from people who watched previous streams and submitted them using a form I posted in chat at the beginning and end of every stream as a way to entertain you a little bit while I hit the restroom. This is Past Zandy here. I recorded this right before the show. Today we have one question from 420 Zombie Jesus. Excellent. Love that. That's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Who asks, what is the point of making videos about Warframe stuff when they change it so often? I'm so frustrated every time I leave the game and I come back and I have to relearn the stuff. Yeah, okay, this is a common frustration. I totally get it. Something that has been said to me many times that I'd like to start this discussion with is the idea that the person said to me, isn't it good that these things change a lot because then you can make, more videos? It's more videos. Listen, I will never need more video ideas as long as I live. I could sit down right now and given infinite time pauses until I'm done, I could easily, effortlessly make 1,000 videos right now. The only reason I can't is because I don't have time. And it wouldn't be better for you if you had to watch a bunch of videos to update yourself, as this person is 420 no-scoping to all of us. It isn't convenient for there to be a lot of videos. It's not really better for anyone, actually. It just gets the creator stuck to the game, and it gets the audience stuck to the creator, and it makes YouTube more money, I guess. But in the long run, nobody is really benefiting here, except, again, maybe YouTube. And the developers certainly aren't benefiting. Now, Warframe is a game where we've spent a lot of words, a lot of breath on why that is the case. Why is it that when things enter Warframe, they're never right the first time? Why is it that the initial balancing pass, you want to say it that way, is so, I'm sorry, bad? It's just very bad. A lot of the time there's problems with updates that we players that play the game consistently find way too fast. Like, it feels like if anybody with any experience had played the game, they would have encountered this, immediately. I remember the Heart of Deimos update, there was like a progression gating problem that you literally hit it within like a half hour. I'm not just saying like hundreds of players, thousands, tens of thousands of people played it, and so of course one person found a bug. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking pretty much every single person who played that update had a problem a very short time after they started playing, to the point where you couldn't have playtested it without running into that problem, which kind of suggests something about how much playtesting there was, or how much the people who listened to the playtesting feedback actually did about it. Basically none at all, which is very frustrating. Personally, I think that Warframe then makes a very good exercise in understanding the idea behind the thing that's being done, not focusing too much on the specific thing right now, but understanding how you're going to move forward given the fact that the game will change, sometimes in frustrating, confusing, unprogressive ways. You need to accept that, and so Warframe can still be fun if you accept that and play it a certain way. But this game has become kind of a good example of that, why it is important to interpret that way, rather than just talking about what is the case now. It will be taken out from under you. And so personally, I find that to be something actually interesting about Warframe, but it is very, very frustrating. And, you know, since you're asking, my dear 420 friend, I'm not making videos like that about Warframe anymore. When I make a video about a topic in Warframe, I'm always going to cover it in a way so general that that thing would need to be wholesale removed from the game entirely for it to become untrue. So to answer your question, I have no intention of making videos like that. I share your frustration very much. On with the show. That was President Zandy you heard for a moment there. Cleared my throat a bit too loud. Welcome back, folks. Thank you to Zalveris for being my most recent patron. You've been my most recent patron for quite a while because I never tell anyone about my Patreon. And I really appreciate the support. Zalveris, you asked a really cool question recently as part of your Parlay Patreon tier for $9 a month. You are looking for a discussion about this D&D build you had in mind where you teleport around a cannon, just a full-size cannon, which is kind of a bending of the rules, but I think it's pretty cool, so I'm looking forward to talking about that. I already recorded it. I'm happy to show it to you all. It'll be up in maybe a week. There's a lot of other parlay right now. And thank you to Ace for the ridiculous amount of tips over the past month or two. 157 total and a recent $104 tip. It makes a huge difference. I don't make a lot of money, so that's a lot of money for me. That means a lot. Thank you very much for the vote of confidence. I'm going to do you proud. And Ace, it sounds like you were just on your way out. So thank you again. And I'll see you tomorrow, Sunday. Anyway, around. Ace watches most of the streams, so I'll see you tomorrow. I hope work is going okay. It sounds like it's not. I'm sorry to hear. I am here only to try to help us endure. Stan yourself, well, welcome back. What's going on? Right, so we talked a little bit before the break about making a kind of landslide or rubble heap focused build. We established that there are some changes that have come to that recently. Some changes that mean that you can use combo stuff on it, which is interesting. Very good, very big power increase for that type of build. You can use Blood Rush. The crit chance is bad, but it's good to have some crits. You can use Weeping Wounds. The status chance is bad, but it's a lot better to have like 20% status than like basically none. So it can still be very good. Something to consider. And I went for gas. You could go in other directions here. A chat recommended Proton Snap, which is a pretty interesting direction. This makes you wall latch, but you get the benefits for 20 seconds. You get a bunch of toxin damage. You could use Arcane Arachne to give base damage to your punches as well. So the wall latch is double duty. You're being a little more efficient. Organ Shatter, because we are critting. And we were talking before about using Focus Energy. The idea of this is to... I'm going to do something. Hold on. Hito. The idea of this is to make your heavy attack efficiency really high, so that when you heavy attack, you lose very little combo, and then you can use Zaw with Exodia Brave, which gives you energy regen on heavy attack kill, and you'll have the melee weapon as like kind of a backup. When you don't have a ton of energy, you're not cleaving through enemies with your punches, you can use your big stacked up combo that you were using for Blood Rush, execute one enemy with a big bongo heavy attack, get some energy regen, some serious energy regen, and not lose that much combo, because between Focus Energy and Zeneric, Inner Might, you have basically maximum heavy attack efficiency. When you need to kill one enemy super a lot, you can do that. Every heavy attack is like single target focus damage. So when you have one really tanky enemy, that would have a niche. And also when you need energy back. So it's a nice way to do a little bit of double duty. And while this isn't exactly what I'd build for a heavy attack weapon, that is meant to be a secondary function. With all this combo, you're going to do plenty of damage. The last mod. Again, it would be nice if you could use Bane effects, but apparently they don't work on the punches at the moment. It's very unclear, but what are you going to do? This is Warframe. So I guess just more gas. Remember that the punches are all impact innately. So all of the status that you put on is getting less valuable because the innate weapons damage it's just impact. That's not going to do much. So having particularly a lot of elemental damage is a little bit better on this kind of weapon because it means your status will be wasted less often. And with this weird setup that we have here, we have a lot of gas and also some electricity. So we'll get the big bongo AoE. It seems fine. Yeah, I would definitely consider shoring up the defenses. I'm kind of interested in infusing Ember's Fire Blast on this build, and then with the augment, you could get, yeah, like restore some health. I guess I'm gonna put that in this slot. Yeah. And then I don't know. I might keep the Rumblers. I'm kind of down to keep the Rumblers. You can use them as a distraction. You can use them if you have excess energy to get a lot of armor with your rubble. I'm going to replace Tectonics because I don't like it. But there are lots of abilities that could be good, like Gloom would be lifesteal. That's smart. Rest and Rage. Why Rest and Rage? I don't feel like those do anything that's specifically relevant to the build. You can make enemies vulnerable to damage, but there's a million ways to do a damage increase. And I think the big obstacle for this build is armor. If you don't do anything to inhibit the enemy armor, you're going to be punching through a lot, which is really bad. This is a powerful damage vulnerability buff, but the CC from Rest is pretty redundant on this build. And again, it's just one more helmet ability that increases your damage. I think that armor reduction is a lot better here, but it's not a bad idea. Again, I just personally feel like I keep typing fire instead of Fire Blast. I feel like that's an interesting option, and it demonstrates the point that a damage increase with some utility that gives you a bit of healing, like that's not so bad. But as with all of the Fists builds, this is going to be very playstyle dependent. I don't really feel like you arguably gain a lot over like playing in a different way. So it's kind of up to you. I do think Gloom is a really good idea because you would get lifesteal, like it's a way to top you off, but I sort of feel like that's going to be a bit hard on the energy if you're also going to use Orgaze, which you might not, like you could just not. I was kind of interested in Healing Flame. I'm very curious how this will interact without the heat gauge. It's probably just bad, like it's probably 25. We do have a bit of strength, which I believe affects it. Yep. Oh, looks like with the helmet system, it splits the difference. So it says 37.5 and then 56, or maybe that's just saying the mean. That's confusing. Anyway, this would be a way to heal you and also reduce enemy armor, which is why I was excited about it. Whenever you'd Fire Blast, it would top off your health and remove enemy defenses, which was my thought. You could also do, like, I guess, Hildren's ability, but this would heal your health. And again, if your health is full, that's when your rubble gives you armor. Having that really high is good for rubble heaps. So that's what I had in mind. Oh, it is supposed to heal for 37.5. Okay, cool. And it scales with strength. So yeah, like Gloom, I thought this was an interesting suggestion, but yeah, again, I feel like Gloom will do the job more consistently. Like your health will be full more, but it's also probably more energy. I don't know. It's something to try. But you may find that it self-sustains, and like adaptation isn't currently on this build. That would be something to think about. I personally sort of feel like if I was going to play this build a lot, I would do this. I feel like it doesn't benefit Landslide, but the benefits to Fire Blast and Petrify, they're both 75 energy. This brings them both down to 50. I feel like that's kind of good, and the range is already pretty high on these abilities. So I feel like maybe streamline here. I don't know. But yeah, and you could well incorporate adaptation somewhere. I think probably, if I'm understanding correctly, most of you are just going to drop Orgaze from this build, which is fine. That's not silly or wrong. But it can kind of refund itself a little bit. Anyway, right. So we talked about that. But now I would like to indulge me, if you will. I would like you to indulge me. I'm indulging myself already, if you know what I'm saying. Okay. And we're going to make a build that is very different, that you will probably think, but that's just bad. And I want to preface this build. The reason that I want to talk about this build is because I feel that it illustrates the kind of the point I made at the beginning of today's stream. And that point is that when you're building like every Warframe, there is this tension. There are a lot of them. Many of them, arguably, don't do anything very unique that is like valuable to your account if you don't simply prefer it. In other words, like not your feelings. Does it objectively do something that accomplishes something compared to the other options on your account? And as we talked about earlier, for a lot of Warframes, if you have every Warframe, there are many builds they're perfectly good builds, but like why? Unless you simply like that build, which is a very good reason to make it. I'm just making the point that maybe that's not a reason for us to talk about them. Because it would mean at the end of all these frames, we would have talked about a similar build like 10 times, you know? You could put like the grouping abilities on most frames, and they're arguably really good choices, like arguably a really good or even the best choice for a lot of builds for a lot of frames, but a lot of those builds are basically the same thing. I really feel it's a waste of our time in a way it doesn't seem like it is yet to talk about those builds. Now, for Atlas here, I felt like it was good to make an exception because, as we just talked about, the punches thing, yeah, this is just like a playstyle choice. It's not like particularly this kind of world-endingly powerful effect. It's just a different way to kill enemies. But it is, you all told me, a preference that you feel a lot of people have. A lot of you just really like this one. Just because it's preference doesn't mean some things aren't more popular preferences than others. And why not talk about them? Again, there's like maybe some interesting build discussion to be had. I hope you enjoyed it. So that was an example of a build that I don't feel is really worth adding into a sort of compendium of builds, but we did anyway, and that's why. This build is the opposite. I think that this may be the only thing that Atlas is uniquely good at, but the problem would be it's maybe not good. Like it might just be bad, you know. Whereas this build, like, it's not especially powerful. You're not really accomplishing anything. It's just different in a way that, like, it is good enough, and it's something different. It's a different way to do it, and why not? You know, that's fine. This one, on the other hand, this is the opposite. It definitely does accomplish something if we can get it to work right, but we might not be able to. Okay, what is it? It's Path of Statues, okay? Just hold on. Let me explain. When you landslide, you leave a trail for a long time, scales with duration, petrifies enemies for a while. What is unique about this effect, at least relative to the rest of Atlas's kit, hold that thought, is that it lets you do things to affect enemies where you are not present. You're playing an interception, is the classic example, and you landslide down a hallway. Now, for a long time, enemies cannot walk down that hallway because they just get petrified. How long is it for? Well, if duration maxes out at about 300%, so that's going to be 36 seconds. That's a while. Like, that's a little while. So we'll start there. We'll just max duration. Okay. Fortunately, Path of Statues does not have a range. There's no range on Path of Statues. This is maybe a concern, though, because Landslide has a range, but I forget if that's affected by rate. We'll come back to that. Anyway, that matters, but hold that thought. We'll figure it out. We're going to max range. Did we get a new... I mean duration. I meant to say duration. Did we get a new duration mod? And I just don't have it? Anyway, again, landslide's radius is affected by range. I forget if the target acquisition radius is affected. Anyway, the arsenal doesn't say. So here we are. We have landslide leaves a trail that for 37 or so seconds, enemies just can't. They're not having it. There is an extra duration mod, and I just don't have it. Is that true? Anyway, so you can make an area impassable if you landslide through it for quite some time. Again, like an interception or a defense mission, this can be very powerful. It is not doing something like Atlas's other abilities. These abilities are much better at petrifying a group of enemies, but they don't do anything if you're not at the area where the thing is happening. You have to be present for them to petrify enemies. Atlas does have a decent number of abilities that do things while he's not present. I don't think they're very good abilities. Tectonics does make a wall. You don't have to be there for there to be a wall. It's just not very good to have a wall. The rumblers draw enemy fire. This is a nice thing to throw into like an interception or a defense mission, a mobile defense. That's fine. The walls are okay for mobile defense. Anyway, it's not great, but Atlas does have a few abilities like that. And we do have the option to use Titanic Rumbler. This makes one big rumbler. I think you want two rumblers to draw enemy fire, but you can activate it to do a slam. It's a knockdown in an area. That's a whole thing. The reason I didn't talk about this as its own build is because this is just Rhino Stomp or like that one Wukong augment. And if you wanted to do that, I would highly recommend just doing those things instead. This might be okay on this build, the landslide build. You might one big rumbler and then you knock enemies over. But I don't know. And you're invulnerable and punching in an area anyway, and I chose to put Fire Blast on. Anyway, I don't know. I don't think so. You do deploy your rumblers. They do have some modicum of drawing enemy fire. So you aren't terrible at defending an area already. It's a little janky, but you're not bad at it. The question then becomes, okay, that is something Atlas wasn't good at before. And maybe you will humor me and agree that this makes Atlas significantly better at it. You probably shouldn't agree, though, that this makes Atlas better at zone control than other frames that are good at that, because it probably doesn't do that. Let's think about it for a sec. And again, you might not want to, that's fine, but I think this is sort of interesting. I'm going to go do this. We're going to go like look at it, the effect. You're going to see the long petrification thing as a way to discuss. Keep in mind that, again, like this is sort of a total meme. You can add this augment that lets you make 3 tectonic fracture walls, which again in mobile defense can be like meh, 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 meh. And this build is already a total meme, so I'm going to put it on. But do I really recommend this? No, not at all. I'm going to put on Vitality. I'm going to put on an Aura for capacity. We're dumping strength, I guess, but maybe not range. Yeah, we can dump strength, but not range. Might as well put the range back up. And Cunning Drift. Range makes the rumblers faster. I know that's really janky, but that is a mechanic. The rumblers run quicker if they have range. And then, again, obviously, like, having the landside ranges. I don't know. Maybe we'll use the range, maybe we won't. I'm just going to leave it on for now. And then we're going to go do some punches in a hallway. Let me just put on some assistant. And dupe. And dupe. And dupe. And I'm just going to bring, like, a gun. Low strength makes the rumblers shrink. Correct. They become small. They become very little small rumblers. High range, low strength makes very small, very fast rumblers. Baby rumblers is amusing. It is. It doesn't really do anything, but it's very cute. Right. Again, the purpose of I need to take off that sentinel weapon. The purpose of this is just to demonstrate that you are indeed competent at zone control. Okay. I put on Hellstrom. This might still do too much damage, but what are you gonna do? Mobile defense, Axie, sure. Yeah, whatever. The fact that you don't have a generic gun called a gun is a real missed opportunity. I'll put that in the show notes. Don't want to do Combat Discipline, Avenger, Grace? Not right now, because we're just testing out one specific thing. The purpose of this video, this stream, these streams, all of my videos, is not to come away with a single build that is the authority on the subject, because that does not exist. The purpose is just to give people inspiration for their own options. That is a good idea, but right now, I'm simply not focused on that. I'm just making a build shell that establishes whether you or I would even be interested in using Path of Statues. So we can talk about that, but that's why I haven't right this second. That's why I left slots on it open. I feel it can be distracting from what the focus of this moment in the testing the thing is actually about. I hope that kind of makes sense. I'm not disinterested in that. That's just why I didn't do it yet. These enemies are too weak. They don't survive the punch. That's a problem. Such a problem. Yeah, okay. Let me pick a different mission. So you could see here that this is a really bad environment for Path of Statues. I was having trouble actually doing it because enemies died too fast, which is also a problem with Path of Statues, mind you. But you could see that that environment was clearly the worst case for it. It's very open. We're really looking for, like, the corridors of a ship. That would be where it would be really good. And, again, there's still lots of problems. Thank you for the Orc and Catalysts. I actually was out of those. Very astute of you to notice. How thoughtful. Thank you very much. Let's fix that problem by taking a melee weapon and throwing it in the garbage. It'd be nice if range affected the width of the stone area. Yes. That would immediately make this maybe a lot more considerable. Let's say it that way. Survival's actually kind of fine. We can at least make the point of it petrifying enemies in an area. So again, the comparison points would be, you know, you can think of like Frost. You're putting down your bubbles. You're putting down your slow area. This is kind of like that, but just like very, very, very awkward. So do you really want to do this instead of that? I feel like it is good at different things, just not very different things. You know what I mean? They are very similar. If you think about Frost, this is basically just Frost, but you don't like ice. I don't know. It's really not that different. And I feel like in a lot of ways it is worse. I think that's a relevant point to make as well. You can see that the targeting of the walls can be a touch wonky. So like I'm gonna do it here, and now enemies that walk through here will hopefully be petrified. But will they actually? We're just gonna do some punches everywhere in this area and see if enemies like actually reliably get petrified when they move through that area. The problem, of course, is that the area behind where Atlas punches is not a lot of area. Now you can see here that this choke point has been pretty effectively locked down for what will be a long time with just that one punch. One punch! Okay. But that is a small area. So the weird thing about this one is that you do create a lot of zone control, but you make it very granular. You know, it's not like one big area, it's a bunch of small areas. You make less of it, but for a lot less energy. It's Stoned Frost, classic. Count on chat to include that part in the description. But yeah, you can see it's not effective against the enemies you are punching, but if you can draw big lines of it around the battlefield, which you sort of can't, but in the event that you find a way to, you do indeed lock down the area in a relatively powerful way. It is somewhat difficult for enemies to get through tight choke points. It's just really, really unreliable. That's how I feel. Again, I don't know, and we should check if the target acquisition range of the punch is affected by range, because I feel like it probably is, even though it doesn't say it is in the arsenal. And if it is, that would make this a lot better. I don't know about good, but certainly a lot better than it is. And we could drop a little bit of duration. Duration is one of those weird stats, right? Like, it's very inefficient to build maximum duration because you get like 75-80% of the duration from half of the mod slots. Duration is a particularly bad stat to max a lot of the time, in my opinion. But yeah, I feel like this does a decent job establishing that, you know, you can kind of petrify enemies with it. It kind of locks down areas. It's really unclear where it's happening, which is always frustrating. Like, there's no indication here, you see what I'm saying? This enemy just kind of walked there and was like, no, basilisk poop. Like, why are these enemies petrified? Like, I know, because I punched there, but you know? So again, this is a total meme on the surface. I feel like the value proposition is actually not terrible behind the scenes. Like, it's just granular frost, literally stoned frost. Frost for the ice intolerant. There you go. But if you can't make the punches range longer, that just feels inadequate, you know? So can you? Again, the arsenal does not say. But the internet probably does. That side. Oh, it is a 15-meter dash range that is not affected by mods, I think. Yes. So you can't make the range at which you start punching, you can't make that any further than it is. If you could make it further, if you could acquire targets with landslide to punch them from further away, I was going to suggest this kind of ridiculous thing. Which was to knock enemies violently away from you, by which to make like you would position enemies and then use that so you could draw a line of path of statues like where you wanted to, which again, like the quality of life of operating that build would be like infinitely negative, right? But it might actually be fairly effective. I just like but that's the problem, is you can't start punching enemies unless they're already pretty close to you, which means every time you do this, you don't draw much petrification area. If you could, I think this could potentially be pretty good. That being said, all this being said, what we've learned here, besides that this is bad and you should not make it, is what Canary said, you know, this might not work as crowd control very much, but it actually made a lot of rubble. You may have seen it did actually get my rubble fairly high, because you only get rubble when petrified enemies are dying. And this makes it so landslide itself petrifies, which is not bad. That's like, it's fine. So should you make a Path of Statues build? No. No, 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 no. No. Do not. At least I don't think so. Should you put Path of Statues on this build instead of Orgaze? Yes. Do that. So I think this is pretty much going to be the build for me. You know, you won me over a little. Let's play it a little bit. I chose that Ember ability, so we can test that out. We'll get out our tech weapon with the Brave and the efficiency and stuff. How about a companion? What, who will accompany us on our fisting rampage? Does Path of Statues work with Orgaze? Ragnavar, I think what you're asking is, if you have Orgaze equipped, do enemies petrified by things other than the Petrify ability give you more loot? And the answer is no. Stoner Frostgate makes even more sense because it gets your rubble high. Ah, yes. Nautilus for grouping? For the landslide punches? That's kind of good, yeah. That's a good place to start. I find it very helpful when you're picking companions like this to have like a companion to beat. Start with something that is clearly useful in some way, and go from there. So like the Nautilus, I mean, Nautilus is usually kind of good, but yeah, that seems useful. The Nautilus will frequently just bundle enemies up and then you can punch them all. That seems good on this build, yeah. It's a good place to start. So again, just to clarify, we're going back to the landslide build. That's what you all are interested in. And you know, maybe if I play it more, I'll end up liking it, right? So here's what we have. We have Avenger and Arachne. You could go other ways. Again, we had this chat requested this sort of silly, it's a lot of damage. If you wall latch, you get base damage from this, and then we have Proton Snap on the stat stick. So you get a lot of damage from wall latching real quick. But I don't know if this is entirely worth it. It's just something people ask to try. I hear Nautilus and my mind goes to launch the missile now. Are you talking about when I hear Nautilus, I think of the FGO thing, the ship, the submarine. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. Well, I'm trying to avoid some spoilers by making sure it's like I can just call it that, right? Yes, not the other things it's later called. Good, the Nautilus, right? The submarine that's in FGO in the story. I also think of League of Legends Nautilus, yeah. Other companions. Let's just go Nautilus. Again, stuff like the Ferox, I feel like isn't actually that useful in this build. You could just chuck it out in a choke point and come back later, and they're like, it would have grouped some enemies up, sure. I just feel like that's quite minor with this build. The big thing for me is that enemies in a choke point are already vulnerable to landslide. So I don't know. But it's not a bad idea. You don't specifically like benefit any more than just punching more from enemies being grouped up. But if you didn't want to use some other primary, then why not? Sure. I'm just going to go with this for now. And again, to get back to something I was saying before, it's important to note that my just approach when I make builds is to deliberately leave space that I don't have something I feel like I need in it open so that I can think about what I might like to pick later. So if that, again, you're like, but why not just bring a primary and a secondary? Yeah, absolutely, but that's why I'm not doing that. Why does this give a little extra credits? What is going on with that? Because it takes longer, maybe? Why does this give a tiny bit more credits? That's weird. But okay. It's important whenever we do this. This will be, we're winding down the framework episode today. It's important whenever we do this to remember the build does kind of need to show its stuff against Grineer, like armored enemies, because that's what, like, it's not going to be hard to punch and kill these guys with a fully built landslide build. That's like sort of beside the point. We just want to see if the build sort of functions on a basic level. Remember, we don't really need to use Petrify anymore because I took off Orgaze and we have Path of Statues now. Right, we have to wall latch for 2 seconds to get those bonuses. 1, 2, there. You get Arachne immediately and then Proton Snap takes a sec. Thank you, Dragoon, by the way. Oh, whoa. That damage was wicked high. I mean, they're just squishy infested, but still. 1, 2. Oh. Yeah, for me, the big problem with Landslide has always just been the targeting. Like, I really don't like that the targeting range is kind of short and you need to target to do it. And I don't know, it's just like, it's not my favorite. I'm trying to verbalize a little bit why I do not like Landslide, because a lot of you do, and I'm sure there are some people in the comments or the description or the wherever we are on the internet. It all blurs together. This is my life. That do not like this and are thinking, yeah, I do not like Landslide either. It's fine not to like Landslide. Yeah, sure. I mean, whatever. People have different tastes, but why don't I like it? They could make it better, right? Make the target acquisition range affected by range. That'd be nice. That would help. I don't know. Would that be an undue buff to the ability? I don't think so. Like, yeah, if I could, I should just be able to punch that ancient. I'm out of energy. Another problem with builds like this, of course, is just sort of a Warframe problem, which is that enemies are just not strong enough for this build to do anything. Now, that's not really a problem per se, you just don't need to. Like, these enemies are so weak that it is irrelevant what I do. That's fine. We're gonna have to go into a Grenier mission on the Steel Path and not be with a squad. And of course, one of the problems with builds like this is that they don't just not need to do anything, they actually don't work when you have, like, teammates killing everything. Which, like, I guess it doesn't matter from a mission success perspective, but, yeah. Let's grab a wall latch real quick, nice cheeky. It's not okay to not like it, unsubbed. You know what? So you win some, you lose some, right? Welcome back, Lion. You are seeing the occasional gas damage be completely unnecessary. That's a whole thing. Yeah, this doesn't really demonstrate anything, so we'll have to go into a Grenier mission. RIP. But this is, you know, it's not a good example of this build. But I do want to say that this is also kind of my point as someone who doesn't like Landslide. Is I just feel like it's very finicky to actually use. It feels like it doesn't fit into Warframe very well. And I do feel like a lot of things that they've said there may be interested in doing, like making it be modded separately, and again, it'd be nice if the range was increased, more augment buffs. Would make it feel a lot better, I think, at least to me. That was a good amount of steel essence. It's almost like I got that resource doubler. Thank you very much, Yatagami. Delicious. You said something interesting before. You could potentially offload combo timer. Yeah, Landslide is affected by the combo counter with Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds. You could use Arcane Dexterity by using the guns. I'm actually not super familiar with Arcane Dexterity. I have it, you know, I know of it. But right off the top of my head, I do not remember exactly what that says it does. Let's take a look. Right. If you have both your primary and secondary just be a kit gun, and you slap Arcane Dexterity on there, you get a 15-second combo counter duration extension. You do not have to use the guns to get it. This is just a stat that they give you. These are obviously very, very good for virtually every melee build. You can have your kit guns just do the thing. Oh, right, any gun, because they're... Sorry. Yes, anyway, arcane confusion. Any gun, because it's not this arcane, it's this arcane. Okay. Right. Anyway, the point is it can be any gun. Rar. Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, you could do double whatever. What rank is your arcane confusion? Max, baby. You just need the adapters from the Steel Ball Run shop. I'm so looking forward to the adaptation of Steel Ball Run in 2032 after the heat death of the universe. But it's going to be very good, so laugh all you like. What weapons do I even have things on? Diplos? Did I kind of like these? Is that a thing I did? I did put one of these on here. Did I really like these that much? Oh, because they have the briefcase thing, and I really like that passive. Maybe that's why. Whatever, I'll just put it on here for now. I don't know what weapons I have those adapters on. Oh, but I am quickly building up a lot of steel essence, so it can be more. We can spend some. A lot of people don't like the Tenet Tetra, so I'm just going to make you all upset and put it on this. That'd be a nice addition to be able to search your weapons for, like, weapons that have the adapter on them. Yeah, that'd be convenient, sure. When is part 2 of Stone Ocean is what I want to know. I know, right? Ooh. I like Stone Ocean. I wasn't sure I was going to enjoy Stone Ocean that much. I really like that I like JoJo's settings, and I sort of felt like a prison wasn't going to... I don't know, I just didn't think it was going to be that much fun. I think it's Jolene that makes it better for me. I just really like her as a protagonist. She's a fun protagonist, and that for me has really distracted me from. Prisons also have a really interesting like metagame. There's a lot of interesting drama around the setting of a prison, you know. So I do think that's helped. Like, I don't find the setting itself, in and of itself, very entertaining, but like socially being in a prison, that is pretty interesting. I've really enjoyed Stone Ocean. But I think it's mostly been Jolene and, like, again, the social aspect of being in a prison. But primary, there we go. Ooh, I have 97 skill lessons. That's enough for like 2 weapons. Just kidding. Stone Ocean, or Stoshan for short. Stoats are like weasels, though, coarse and get everywhere. What the hell happened? Ace, I thought you left. Are you okay? Stoats are vicious. What is a stoat? Is this an animal? Hold on. Whoa. Yeah, they're like meerkats and otters and weasels. Made a hybrid build with all the multipliers. For big bongo damage. They're so cute. Yeah, they're... Wow, these are really cute. Everybody look up... Oh, they're so cute. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. You sure added something to my life. We'll unlock this guy for propriety. Add a dexterity arcane. Yeah, okay, cool. I need to go, so we're gonna run over the build. I started this stream by saying that Atlas is pointless and doesn't work. No. I feel Atlas is an important example of part of my approach to framework. I care what you think is interesting. At the same time, we need to balance that with to what degree are we going to discuss builds that, like, somebody just might like it, but that's true of every build. We decided that because Atlas doesn't really have much else going on, we might as well make a landslide build. And I also humored myself and made a Path of Statues area control build, which was very bad. So we were inspired to put Path of Statues on the landslide build because this gives you rubble without spending energy on Petrify or Rumblers. You might want to use those abilities, and now that I'm not going to use Petrify, like I was going to use Orgaze before, now that I'm not planning to cast Petrify, I kind of want to get rid of Petrify instead of Tectonics, because at least Tectonics very rarely has some utility, and I'm not going to make more than one Atlas build, me, myself. Yeah. Anyway, I thought Fire Blast was an interesting way to remove enemy armor while also giving you a spot of healing. Now, there are some problems. Knocking enemies around when it's already hard to target them with Landslide might not be the best feeling. That's something I would like to try more. But you could use Gloom to heal yourself. That just wouldn't remove enemy defenses. You could very well simply use Corrosive Projection, and your Sentinel can help get through the armor a little. Some thoughts. You could keep Petrify to cast it on the Rumblers to make them more tanky. That's perfectly reasonable. I think that's a minor benefit, but not a bad idea, no. I think I would probably be willing to drop the efficiency, because I'm largely only planning to cast Fire Blast, and then hopefully I'm not paying for Landslide because of Rubble Heap. So I would kind of rather have the range at that point. But that, anyway, that's just preference. Or establishing. We added some other stuff. You can use various mods to affect Landslide. Combo counter mods do work. For a long time, they didn't. If you played Warframe for a long time, you might be coming in here and thinking, these don't work. They do, which is confusing to me because for like half a decade they didn't, but they do now, I guess. But then, like, Bane mods don't work for whatever reason. Anyway, Landslide is a pure impact melee weapon with a normal crit damage multiplier, but only 5% base crit chance and 5% base status. These still increase that by a lot, but to be fair, Weeping Wounds is only really getting you like 20-25% status chance here, so you may consider that not worth it. I just feel like there's not a lot else to build. Like, you've already got a ton of elemental damage, you've got crits as much as you can, you've got status as much as you can, you've got base damage as much as you can. So, like, what else, you know? I don't think status is very good, but there's not much of an opportunity cost because not a lot affects landslide. For the weapon that it's on, there are a few weapons that give you minor benefits. Venga Prime makes the combo counter a little bit bigger, but that's a very minor benefit from these. So we chose to use Zaw. The Zaw has Exodia Brave, so when you run out of energy, you can spend all that combo you have maxed out. You probably get 12x combo from doing your landslide. You have max combo. You could just whack out a heavy attack and get a ton of energy back. And with combo efficiency from Focus Energy and Zeneric, you only spend 10% of the combo. That is a fairly powerful benefit. You might be asking, couldn't I also just use Energizing Dash? Well, they do stack, but yes, you could. And I do think this build can run Energy Hungry, but it's an option. You can use something like the Skana or Dual Cleavers is the one I finally remembered since you mentioned it that I have the augment for. They are... Now I can't find it. Justice Blades. They give more melee damage. Now remember that this is base damage. It's just adding to Prime Pressure Point. So you're going from like 165, 150 melee damage to 250. You know, it's not doubling all your damage. It just increases it by a significant amount. It does. These get a lot less valuable. Still good, but not even less amazing if you're running base damage on your arcanes. And you may not want to do that. Like, this is easy to activate, but you might not want to use it. Our purpose here is to give options because there are options. And personally, I feel that when you're doing good damage, like when you can get through the armor, the punches don't need more damage than all this. They really don't. And so I would much rather have the utility of that energy, you know, thwack. I like that. That appeals to me. If you do want more damage, like, that's up to you. Only you can know whether that would be relevant to you. It's definitely not relevant to me. So I, holy shit, got tipped $150. Been a fan of the things you make and the discussions you encourage for years. Thanks for being a nice dude and thanks for doing what you do. Well, I'm damn near going to be able to do it for the foreseeable future now. Thank you. Hollow, I really appreciate it. I'm always very excited to find that someone who's watched for a long time, probably a lot on YouTube, has found the Twitch streams because I make stuff here very often. I've been doing this consistently for a long time. So that's really encouraging. Thank you. I really appreciate the support. This is a very pivotal time. You've been watching the stream for a while, I gather. So I wanted to tell you that it makes a particularly big difference now. Even people that are $1 a month patrons, that makes a huge difference. If 1,000 people do that, I can turn off ads and just forget about that and just make stuff. So that makes a big difference. But the way that people like me actually make money is a lot of people paying $1 a month, and that adds up and makes a difference. But then a few people generally do support for a lot more. They're able to be really generous. So I want you to know that that is an important and valuable part of the thing that I'm doing for a living. Thank you. And thank you very much for the tier 1 sub for 14 months, Quiet Canary. Has it only been 14 months? I feel like it's been a couple of years. Anyway, thank you, and welcome back. It's been good to have you today. I will spend a little bit of time just playing this. I said I wanted to try it against Steelpath Grenier because we haven't really gotten to demonstrate like it actually being effective. We've mostly finished summarizing like what it does. And one last thing we just added is the guns. It doesn't really matter, but if you have two primary and secondary that both have the dexterity arcanes, that gives you 15 seconds of combo duration, just like kind of for free. I probably won't use them that much, or I might pick different guns. You know, I'm sure you could put some utility in here. But the point is, just like any two weapons that have dexterity arcanes, and that puts your combo counter at a cozy 20 for very little cost on a build where we're just going to be spamming landslide anyway. So there it is. Oh my goodness. Dragoon, thank you for gifting 25 tier 1 subs. Yike. I think that makes basically everyone in chat sub to this channel. Dragoon, that's absurd. Thank you. I wouldn't want to act like that isn't extraordinarily welcome. I gotta say, we're doing the work here. Thank you very much. It means a lot. Congratulations to many, many, many people, some regular and some just tuning in, for getting gifted a bunch of subs to my channel. I normally stream this time every week, And also tomorrow at this time, and also on Sunday at this time, we just stream other stuff, but it's always talking about builds. So if that's something you'd like, please come back and check that out. It'll always be free. Let's play this build a little, and then I do have to go. But we have a modicum of time. Come on, Grenier, what do you got for me? Grenier capture. I'll do it solo, and then maybe we'll get to punch some people. Ha! I dodged the gift subs. How? It's random. Okay. That's wild. Right, so the other thing we need to mention, ooh, there's the Sentinel pulling enemies together for us. Whoa, they went for a trip. The other thing to mention is that we are going through the frames in alphabetical order, and I'm skipping frames that haven't been primed. So if you do the math, which is not math at all, that means Banshee is next. Looking forward to talking about Banshee for reasons that I'm sure I don't need to explain. I hope you are looking forward to talking about Banshee too. I think there's quite a bit to say. Oh, you can't landslide this guy? That's big buttholes. Wow. So bring your Banshee build ideas. Bring the stuff that you feel like is either very effective and or just fun on Banshee. If the build has sort of a unique playstyle appeal of some sort, and or it's like good, then we will talk about it to the best of my ability in our show this time next week. You're at the end. We normally start like about 2 hours earlier than now. It'll be that time next week. Using a little bit of the healing from Fire Blast, and I really like it so far. Wall latching repeatedly to get the bonus. Shoot this guy's helmet off before I punch him. And use this to reduce the armor. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, alright, alright. So heavier enemies, that wasn't so bad. I'm not playing the build fully optimally either. The radius of Fire Blast is also really good. That's a positive. I'm not successfully keeping my health full, but that's more like a playstyle thing. That is a note in favor of Gloom. Like, you'd get more armor at the expense of not having the armor reduction tool against enemies if you went Gloom. It's not to be understated how much more consistent that would be than this. Yeah, but I really do feel like getting through the armor is important. I don't know. Anyway, so that's a thought. But we've shown you can do enough damage to get through them, but I don't think it's great. So something to think about. Canary, thanks for gifting Lion a sub. Eat your words. Grendel's Nourish is not armor reduction, but it does attach Toxin without an augment. If Toxin is what we want, maybe Grendel's on the table. Maybe. Yeah, again, I feel like I like the idea of Fire Blast in theory, because I feel like we value the ability to reduce armor and heal in the same ability. That just feels comfortable. But if I'm going to keep running out of energy for it, that's not doing that job. And Nourish would give you Toxin damage, which you could use to build Corrosive and just bypass some of the armor. Really, I feel like my takeaway is that probably you drop Weeping Wounds and build a lot of Corrosive and Cold to just have damage types that bypass the armor. Like, I think that's a good, what Canary is saying is probably the way to go here. This is a meaningful increase in status, but I don't think it is more valuable than just having a lot of Corrosive to get through that armor. And it is still really good to reduce it, but that, you know. So yeah, I can get behind Gloom, or like Nourish is not a bad idea. And if it was just healing to keep me topped off, there are other abilities too. But Gloom is a good idea. It's a little energy hungry. Yeah, so I would say for the Helmet ability, I'm not sure what I'm going to pick. Something to sustain health. Build landslide to counter armor by damage type, which I would word as normally a bit of a last resort, but here I feel like that's the way to go. Dragoon, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub to Feather. All this spiteful charity. That sounds like a Magic card. Yeah, that's because Graceful Charity is a Yu-Gi-Oh card, which I unfortunately know. Anyway, it's too bad, right? Like, the main thing I have to say about Atlas is that Orgaze can be a really spicy helmet ability on Necros. But I think, given that, this was a satisfying 2-hour show about Atlas. Pot of Greed allows you to draw 2 cards from your deck. I gotta go. If you're interested in being part of the Banshee one, that'll be this time next week. So we started about 2 hours ago. That's when we'll start next week. Bring your ideas for things you feel like Banshee is uniquely good at, or just very unique at. That might be effective playstyles, but just like a breath of fresh air, something different, or uniquely powerful. Banshee is, I think, a really interesting option. Very, very the opposite of Atlas. Her abilities do a whole bunch of things, but there's the tankiness elephant in the room. So I'm looking forward to that. And then again, we're going in alphabetical order, but we're skipping primes, so we won't be doing Baruch and Caliban after that. We'll be doing Chroma. Another thing you need to know is that I'm not going to do framework on days that updates come out in Warframe, because of experience that the community is a little bit too distracted by the update, and our discussion is going to be constantly interrupted by people, understandably, excited about the update. Nothing wrong with that. Those streams will just take a break. That's, I'll probably just stream Warframe. Tomorrow, I don't know what we're going to stream, but it will be Buildcraft stuff. I'm just not sure what game. And on Sundays, we stream Genshin Impact build stuff. I have some excitements and some quibbles with the new environment, but those artifact sets are very fun build tools to have access to. So we'll talk about that then. I'll see y'all later. Archive parlay form away. Submit a question here if you want to have it answered during the break next week. I'll see y'all later. Thanks for all the big bongo support today, folks. It really means a lot when this is the way that I make all of my money for a living. I am now able to save up and get toward moving into a better recording space, a better studio space. That is huge. Like, that's like my goal, period, at the moment. So being able to do that, having the vote of confidence from y'all, really means a lot. I do want to say, again, that as much as it means the world to be tipped such huge amounts, like that is a huge help, I don't want you to feel like because you can't do that, you can't help. If you are able to support me for as little as $1, that does make a difference. Again, remember that I only have to convince so many people to do that before like that I can live off of that and keep doing this for all of you as much as I want, as much as you want. Talk to y'all soon.